There was no music playing in the background, no TV, no casual hum of the fridge. Just silence, pregnant and piercing like the calm before something shattering. Nathan Hale stepped through the door of the home he'd built brick by brick with his own sweat and stubbornness, only to stop cold at the faint scent of something floral and unfamiliar lingering in the hallway. Expensive. Too expensive for his wife's usual taste. That perfume didn't belong to him, and he damn well knew it didn't belong to her either. He dropped his toolbox with a dull thud, listening for movement upstairs. There were footsteps, soft, confident. A giggle, not hers. A man's low chuckle followed. Nathan's chest tightened, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He moved on instinct, each step up the staircase like climbing toward a truth he already feared but couldn't yet name. Halfway up, he stopped, his ears catching the creak of their bed. Their bed. The same one he built in their first year of marriage when they couldn't afford more than plywood and dreams. He blinked hard. His hand tightened around the stair railing, and for a moment, he felt the world tilt slightly off its axis. He didn't need to open the door, but he did. Inside the bedroom, the sheets he folded that morning were tangled now with the limbs of two people. A man, sharper jawline, shirtless, smug, paused only briefly when their eyes met. But it was the woman Nathan had once believed was the center of his world who truly undid him. Sabrina, his wife of 6 years, the woman who once cried during commercials, who loved daisies, who swore she'd never be like her mother. She didn't flinch. Instead, she sat up with a soft grin, reaching casually for the silk robe Nathan had bought her 2 Christmases ago. "Nathan," she said coolly, like greeting an old friend who'd walked into the wrong room. "You're home early." He couldn't speak, couldn't move. The other man stretched, pulling on his watch like this was just another Tuesday. "Hey man, didn't know she was still married." Nathan blinked. "Still married?" Sabrina shrugged as she tied the robe around her waist, her eyes dry and indifferent. "It was over months ago. You were just too busy playing husband to notice." The words didn't land all at once. They came in slow waves, each one dragging him farther from the shore of whatever version of reality he'd thought he lived in. "But we just talked about starting a family," Nathan muttered, his voice low, choked. Sabrina rolled her eyes. "God, Nathan, that wasn't real. I said what you needed to hear so you wouldn't ask questions. And guess what? You didn't." She turned to the other man with a smirk. "Logan, could you give us a moment?" Logan, a name Nathan would burn into his memory, nodded, unfazed, and strolled past him like Nathan was just furniture, just an inconvenience. As the door clicked shut, Sabrina leaned back against the headboard and crossed her legs. "You were a safe bet, Nathan. Stable, predictable. You'd never cheat, never yell, but you also never listened. I wanted more. I found more." Nathan's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the dresser. "So you used me?" "No," she said. "I tolerated you. There's a difference." The silence that followed was thick and slow. Nathan's breath hitched. The house, his house, suddenly felt like a stranger. She stood, walking past him without so much as a glance. "I'm staying at Logan's tonight. I'll come by tomorrow for my things. You can keep the house. I've outgrown it." The door closed behind her. Nathan stood alone in the ruins of his illusions, surrounded by familiar things that now felt alien. The gardenia-scented candle on the dresser, the framed photo from their honeymoon, the closet still filled with clothes she had no intention of wearing ever again. He wanted to scream, to cry, but what he did instead was far more dangerous. He sat at the edge of the bed, pulled out his phone, and opened a blank note. He titled it, "The Fall and Rise of Sabrina Hale." Then he wrote his first words beneath it. "She wants war. I'll give her poetry made from ruin." Because Nathan wasn't going to let her just leave, not after taking his heart and setting it on fire. If she wanted out, he'd let her go. But she wouldn't walk away clean. This wouldn't be the story of a broken man abandoned by a selfish woman. No. This would be the story of a man who buried his weakness, forged his rage into steel, and made sure that when the world turned on her, They would not forget his name. Nathan didn't sleep that night, not because he couldn't, but because his mind refused to shut down. Everything had changed in a matter of minutes. The woman he once thought he'd die beside had smiled in his face while someone else's hands had been on her body. And yet, the most terrifying part wasn't the betrayal. It was how calmly she had delivered it, like she'd rehearsed, like she'd waited for this moment. By sunrise, Nathan was already moving, not aimlessly, not in panic. This was calculated. Every step, every breath, every click of a key was a thread in a web he was spinning just for her. He started with her laptop. She'd forgotten it, or maybe she was arrogant enough to think he wouldn't touch it. Sabrina's password hadn't changed in years. Her late cat's name and the year she lost her virginity. Easy, the screen lit up, illuminating a different woman than the one he married. Emails, hundreds of them, some flirtatious, some disgusting, all from Logan Sinclair, her so-called boss. There were calendars with dinner dates marked as strategy sessions, hotel confirmations, travel expenses labeled as client development, and photos. Photos that made Nathan's stomach twist. Photos in their bedroom. Photos in his car. Photos in places she told him she was visiting her sister. One email in particular stood out. Logan had written, "Let him push the file. If you play cold enough, he'll break. I'll make sure the promotion's waiting." So this was planned, manipulated, engineered. Nathan didn't cry. He copied everything, emails, photos, call logs, onto a hard drive. Every keystroke sharpened his focus, cooled his fury into something much more lethal. She wanted him broken. She wanted him to snap. Let her wish be granted. By noon, Nathan met with the only person he could trust, Evelyn Hartman, a razor-sharp attorney who had once represented a friend of his through a brutal corporate lawsuit. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't need to. Once Nathan showed her the evidence, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You don't want just a divorce, do you?" "No," Nathan replied. "I want a reckoning. I want her career, her status, her future wiped." Evelyn nodded slowly. "We'll start with the financials. You keep the house, the investments, the pension. She gets what's left, if anything. We'll file for fault-based divorce, adultery, emotional abuse. There's precedent." "What about him?" Nathan asked, eyes dark. "Oh, Logan Sinclair?" Evelyn smiled without humor. "That part I'll leave to you." Nathan spent the next day in silence, in motion. He stopped by her office building, not to speak, but to watch. Logan pulled up in a slick obsidian car that practically screamed compensation. Sabrina trailed behind him, laughing too loudly, flipping her hair like she was still 25. Nathan took a photo of them walking inside. Then he walked to the building across the street, entered a quiet cafe, and opened a laptop of his own. He uploaded everything anonymously to Logan's board of directors, to his HR department, to a handful of reporters who specialized in executive scandals, to Sabrina's firm's ethics committee. No words, just data. Let the wreckage explain itself. That night, Sabrina returned. She didn't knock. She used her key, walked in like she still owned the air, and called out casually, "Nathan, I just need to grab a few more things." She stopped when she saw the dining table. On it, a copy of the divorce papers, a printed thread of her emails with Logan, her necklace, the one Nathan gave her on their anniversary, cut in half and placed beside a USB. She turned pale. "What is this?" Nathan appeared from the hallway, his voice calm. "Justice, measured, delivered." "You went through my things," she snapped, attempting outrage. "I went through our marriage," he replied, stepping closer, "and I found a tumor rotting at the center." "You have no right." "I had every right," he interrupted, voice sharper now. "You brought that man into our bed. You wore my ring while planning a future behind my back. And now you'll see what it feels like to be left with nothing." Her eyes shimmered with fear, not remorse. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We weren't even sleeping together anymore." Nathan's laughter was low. You think I care about the sex? I care that you lied to me, played house while calculating an exit strategy. She looked away. You were boring, Nathan. Predictable. I needed more. And now you'll have less, he whispered. She turned toward the door, but Nathan said, By the way, Logan's been suspended. Investigation pending. Sexual misconduct. Abuse of power. She froze. Your emails helped, he added. So did the photos. Sabrina's mouth parted. You didn't. I did. She spun to face him. That's illegal. No, Nathan said softly. It's truthful. And truth hurts worse than prison. Tears gathered in her eyes, but Nathan didn't move. You can keep the clothes, the memories, the guilt. I've filed. Don't come back. You don't mean that. He stepped aside, holding the door open. I meant every word. And as the door clicked shut behind her, Nathan didn't smile. He simply sat. He breathed. And for the first time in days, he felt the beginning of something unfamiliar. Peace. But it wouldn't last long, because revenge was never just one moment. It was a storm, and he had only sent the first wave. The world Sabrina knew began to crumble not with a bang, but with silence. It started 3 days after she walked out of Nathan's house with trembling hands and red-rimmed eyes, believing the worst had already passed. She still wore her heels like armor, still carried her designer tote like it meant something. She still believed deep down that Nathan's rage was temporary. But the universe had other plans. First, the HR call came. Polite, direct, brutal. They were conducting an internal review following anonymous allegations regarding her relationship with a superior. Sabrina's heart clenched in her chest as they outlined a timeline, a perfectly documented one. The emails, the hotel bookings, the bonus she received 2 weeks after a trip with Logan. She ended the call and vomited into her bathroom sink. That evening, Logan called, panicked. Why didn't you warn me? He hissed. Warn you about what? About Nathan. He sent everything. HR, the board. Hell, even my wife knows. Sabrina froze. Your wife? Yeah, Logan snapped. She's filing for divorce, wants half my shares. My lawyer said we could be looking at criminal charges, abuse of power, coercion. I didn't make you promote me, she whispered. The fear in her voice real now. It doesn't matter. They think I did. Do you know what they're calling me? A predator. You ruined me. And then he hung up. She called back once, twice, 15 times. He never answered. Logan Sinclair vanished like smoke. Meanwhile, Nathan had not disappeared. He watched the headlines roll in, quietly, methodically. Sinclair and Beckett executive on leave following ethics probe. Anonymous whistleblower reveals scandal inside marketing giant. Sabrina Hale's career takes hit, amid affair allegations. Each headline was a nail in the coffin of the fantasy she had built, the life she thought she deserved. But Nathan wasn't finished. He dug deeper, not just into Sabrina's digital sins, but her financial ones too. With Evelyn's help, he uncovered credit cards she'd opened under his name, lavish expenses disguised as consulting meals, and a fund transfer that conveniently misplaced nearly $188,000 fraud. Sabrina hadn't just cheated, she'd stolen. Evelyn smirked as she pushed the documents across the table. This could get her jail time. Nathan looked down at the papers, jaw tight. No, he said. Not yet. Why not? He leaned back in his chair, voice calm. Because jail is too clean, too quick. I want her alive for every single moment of her downfall. I want her to choke on the silence that follows the applause she used to crave. Evelyn raised a brow. You want her to feel abandoned? I want her to feel forgotten. Sabrina, on the other hand, was spiraling. Friends stopped returning her calls. Her parents, embarrassed by the headlines, asked her not to attend her niece's birthday. Her co-workers kept their distance. She had to resign voluntarily or face formal termination. Her bank accounts froze pending investigation. Her apartment building manager left a note taped to her door about unpaid dues. The final blow, a letter arrived. It was from Nathan. Inside was a single photograph, their wedding photo, cut directly down the middle. She stared at it for what felt like an hour. The symbol was clear. Her tears hit the paper and blurred the image, but nothing could erase what it meant. She had lost him, not the version of him that fixed shelves or made pancakes on Sundays. She had lost a version of him that believed in her. That was the real death. But Nathan hadn't simply moved on. No, he had changed. The betrayal had carved something new inside him. He no longer looked at people the same way. Trust was no longer automatic. It was earned, clawed through glass and fire. He threw himself into rebuilding, not just his home, but himself. He reconnected with old friends he pushed away during the marriage. He started running again, cooking again, laughing again. He even began volunteering at a youth center, something he'd always wanted to do but never had time for. The kids loved him, especially one, Miles, a shy boy with trust issues and a quiet mind. Nathan saw himself in the boy, broken, cautious, healing, and with each day, Nathan grew stronger. Not bitter, not vengeful, just aware. He had been the kind of man who gave everything to someone who never deserved even half. But now he was building a life where the only person he needed validation from was himself. Until one night, 3 weeks after her fall from grace, he heard a knock at the door. He opened it, and there she was. Sabrina Hale, makeup smeared, eyes sunken, her once pristine blazer wrinkled and stained with rain. "Please," she whispered. "Can we talk?" Nathan didn't move. "You were right," she continued, voice breaking. "About everything. Logan dumped me. My job is gone. I can't go to my parents. I can't go anywhere. I have nothing left." "I know," Nathan said calmly. "That's what I wanted," she flinched. "You wanted me destroyed?" "No," he said. "I wanted you to understand. And that only happens when the noise fades, when all you're left with is the echo of what you did." She sobbed then. "I miss you." "No," Nathan said again. "You miss who you were when you had me." And he closed the door, gently, without rage, without regret, because the man she left behind was gone. In his place stood someone she would never be able to touch again. Sabrina didn't leave Nathan's doorstep right away. She stood there for over an hour, staring at the closed door like it might open again if she cried hard enough. But it didn't. Not once. That night, she checked into a budget motel, the kind with flickering lights and stained carpets. She had just enough left on a prepaid card for 2 nights. After that, she didn't know. The headlines had slowed, but the consequences hadn't. Her inbox was empty. No job offers, no messages, no Logan, no family. Even her mother, once her biggest fan, had said flatly over the phone, "You brought this on yourself." Sabrina was learning what real silence felt like. Meanwhile, Nathan was starting to live again. Every morning, he went for a run, not to escape, but to breathe, to clear his head. Each mile shed another layer of who he used to be. A man who ignored his own needs to keep someone else happy. He started building furniture in his garage. Not for money, for peace. Wood was honest. It would never lie. One afternoon, a woman named Delilah who worked at the youth center stopped by to return some borrowed tools. She had kind eyes, a past full of pain too. They talked for hours, and it felt natural. Not a spark, not yet, but a start. Sabrina tried to find work again. She showed up to interviews with her resume and her regret, but the questions were always the same. "Didn't you work with Sinclair and Beckett?" "We read something about an ethics complaint." "Weren't you involved in—" And each time, her throat dried up. Each time, the answer was, "We'll be in touch." They never were. Then came the envelope. No return address. Inside was a photo of a group of kids at the youth center. Nathan was in the middle, laughing, with a little boy clinging to his leg. He looked healthy, strong, whole. On the back, written in ink, "This is who I became when I stopped loving you." Sabrina dropped the photo like it burnt, because it did. A week later, she saw him by accident, outside a bookstore downtown. He looked different, lighter, like the weight she placed on his shoulders had finally lifted. He didn't see her, and for the first time, she realized she was just a shadow now, of the life she threw away, of the man she once thought would never walk away. Sabrina thought the silence meant the storm had passed, but Nathan hadn't just moved on. He had evolved, and he still had one final move left. Months had passed since she last saw him. She was living in a rundown shared apartment, waiting tables at a cafe where no one knew her name. The girl who once wore Chanel suits now scrubbed coffee off chipped floors. One day, while cleaning tables, she heard a voice. His voice. "Sabrina." Her heart stopped. She turned, and there he was, holding a file in one hand, a calm smile on his face. He placed the file on the table. "What's this?" she whispered. "Final audit," he said. "The joint accounts, the stolen funds, the name you signed mine to." She went pale. "You said you wouldn't press charges." "I said not yet," he replied. "I wanted you to feel the fall first, to live inside the ruins you built." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, Nathan, I've lost everything." He leaned in, eyes cold. "And now you'll lose your name too." She opened the file, and inside was evidence prepared for federal fraud, signed by a financial investigator, stamped ready. She choked. "You're not really going to submit this?" "I already did," he said. She staggered back, breath short. "Why?" "Because this wasn't just about betrayal," he said softly. "It was about justice for the man you left bleeding while you chased power." Then he stood and walked out. No anger, no malice, just closure. 2 weeks later, she was arrested at her shift. The cafe fell silent as she was handcuffed and led outside. Cameras flashed. The girl who once craved attention now drowned in it. But Nathan, he didn't watch it unfold. He was in the park with Miles, teaching him how to ride a bike. A new chapter, a new life, a quiet one. The kind built not on revenge, but on freedom. And this time, it was his.